Thank you so much for joining us for our Civic Season webinar series, where we have partnered with democracy organizations to celebrate civic learning and engagement in libraries from Juneteenth through July 4th. As part of our Vote Libraries initiative through the Every Library Institute, we provide training for public librarians to be active participants in election administration. As trusted public institutions, public libraries can make election participation more accessible to all members of their community. Today, we are happy to have Gwen Stembridge with us. Gwen is the Associate Director of Education and Partnerships at Nonprofit Vote, a nonpartisan resource provider for conducting voter engagement. Gwen is an experienced community organizer, policy analyst, volunteer program manager, and nonprofit professional. We are so grateful to have you here with us today, Gwen.
Thank you so much, Cinnober, and Every Library. I'm glad to be here. So this, for the next little bit here, we're going to talk about making connections, voter engagement and libraries. That's really what it's all about, is making those connections. And we know that libraries have such a important impact in voter engagement, and I'm excited to talk with you all today. As Cinnober said, my name is Gwen Stembridge. I am so excited to be a part of this work, and I come from a community organizing background, and so this opportunity to really gather you all as libraries, as workers there, and as community builders is really exciting. Let me tell you a little bit about Nonprofit Vote. So Nonprofit Vote has been around since about 2006, equipping nonprofits with the tools and resources that they need to help the communities that they serve participate in voting and democracy. And the reason that nonprofits are so crucial in this is because nonprofits are often serving communities that have been historically excluded from the process, from the voting process, whether that is, systemic, whether that is, young people who are coming in to vote, whether that is folks who have moved a lot and, don't have ready access to the things that they need. But really, we want all voices to be heard in our democracy and to build that more inclusive democracy so that we are truly representative. A little bit about what our work looks like is that we have a lot of different tools, a lot of different ways to engage. We have a free national webinar series that happens just about monthly. You can sign up on our website. All you have to do is register and show up. Then often the recording is sent after that. So topics ranging from the SAVE Act to how to build out a voter engagement plan, to advocacy, to local elections. It really varies there, but we hope that those are opportunities to really build your skills. We also have a resource library on our website that has tools and templates. There are a lot of timelines, so we're trying to do the work for you ahead of time so that you have the resources that you need. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Folks have been doing this work for a long time, and so please use those tools. Use those tools that we have provided. We also offer tailored support for partner organizations. We have a multi-state field program where we're working a little bit more closely with some organizations to actually implement these programs. We also are working with funders on a philanthropy for voter engagement initiative to ensure that the philanthropic sector is supportive of voter engagement within nonprofits. And then we're the lead managing organizing organization for National Voter Registration Day. So the first part here of my presentation, I wanted to just talk a little bit about policies that are impacting voting these days. And you may be familiar with the SAVE Act, but this is one that has really gotten in the news in the past few months. So a little bit about the SAVE Act. And again, this is on the federal level. This is Congress we're talking about. And the SAVE Act the idea of it is to require proof of citizenship to vote, which sounds really logical, absolutely makes sense. That citizens should be the ones voting. And it might seem really innocuous at first, but One of the things that we've flagged is that it does pose some issues that impact a large percentage of Americans. Things like Real ID don't necessarily provide proof of citizenship unless it's presented with additional documentation. There are some folks that their photo ID might be a different name than their birth certificate if they've changed their name in marriage or for other reasons. So there's a lot of just other pieces to this that the policy analysts have really pulled out. So just want to flag that for anybody who's doing that voter engagement work to pay attention to the SAVE Act and where it is. It has passed the House and so would move next to the Senate. It's sitting in the Senate right now, has not seen that movement yet. And here at Nonprofit Vote, we're hopeful that it does not. One of the other things that we'll want to pay attention to is that the states, there are certain states that have actually taken up acts or bills that are very similar to the SAVE Act, but at the state level. They're kind of mirroring that same language. And if you want to find out more about that, we actually just did a webinar about it with our friends at the Voting Rights Lab and also the Brennan Center for Justice and some others. So you can see that webinar with some experts there on our website, and we'll share the link out as well. The next thing that I'll talk about here is the numbers. I think it's really important to, when we're talking about voter engagement in nonprofits, it's important to get to the why. What is the impact? Why would nonprofits do voter engagement? And we actually have some data around that. We did a report last year. It's fresh data just from 2024 that found that nonprofits who engage voters actually really move the needle on voter engagement. So we found that voters engaged by nonprofits are actually 10 percentage points more likely to show up and vote. That's pretty significant. That means that the work that you all are doing in libraries and food banks, in community organizations, are that work that you're doing, that nonpartisan voter engagement, is really making a big difference. We even see that impact is increased when we're talking about voters of color, moves up to 12 percentage points, 15 percentage points for those earning between $20,000 and $30,000 a year. So on the lower income end of the spectrum, and then 14 percentage points for young voters 18 to 24. So that work you're doing with young voters, all of that is really making a difference. That's just scratching the surface of this report. If you'd like to take the deep dive, if you are a data nerd, which I imagine there's a few librarians who really appreciate data, please do dive into the Nonprofit Power report to learn more. The next thing I want to talk about, whenever we talk about 501c3 nonprofits and voter engagement, we talk about staying nonpartisan. This is really crucial for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it is legally required that you stay nonpartisan as a 501c3 organization. And secondly, it's important not just legally, but in order to build trust with your community, right? If an individual is looking for that nonpartisan information about voting, they come to you, they expect you to be nonpartisan. They can get information about specific candidates and information from political parties when they want to, but you all serving as that nonprofit, nonpartisan resource is really crucial. Here are some things that organizations are not allowed to do in order to remain nonpartisan. So this is just straight from the IRS. Organizations are not allowed to endorse or oppose any candidate or political party, donate money or resources, like holding space, things like that. There's a lot of legal nuance in this. And I will preface all of that to say that I am not an attorney and this is not legal advice. This is general guidance and just sharing information from the IRS. You're also not allowed to conduct any partisan election-related activity or give out prizes or incentives to register to vote. But there are lots of things that nonprofit organizations can do. And so that's what we're going to focus on in this time today. So things that nonprofits can do is register voters, or whatever those laws look like in your state, you are able to participate in the registration process, whether that's giving information about registration, becoming an organization that has trained volunteers or staff members that are able to register voters, or providing that information in any way that you can. You are allowed to send election reminders. So dates and times. You might be surprised with some voters, they just don't have in their mind what day is election day. So just even that really simple reminder, hey, election day is November, whatever day it is for that year, can be a really good reminder. That might be little Susie's t-ball game, and you need to schedule around that, right? Just even that reminder of the date can be really valuable. In addition to reminders about deadlines for early voting or for mail-in or absentee voting, those things are really, really crucial. You can distribute nonpartisan candidate guides. So these are guides. We have more information on our website, but essentially it's a way to amplify the positions and the answers to your questions from candidates to your community. So you're able to ask questions that are relevant to your work and your mission, and then amplify those answers to your community so that they become more informed when they're going to the ballot box. Hosting candidate forums. Similarly, this is a way to really inform your community about what these candidates' values are. You can educate voters about the options for voting, right? You can vote in person, you can vote early, you can vote by mail. You can drive people to the polls. This is one you can coordinate with other organizations, or drive people to the polls if that's part of a service that you offer. You can also support or oppose ballot measures. Even though ballot measures, there may be certain candidates that are supporting them or not supporting them, that is irrelevant. You as an organization, if you have a stake in the result of that ballot measure, you are able to take a position on that. You want to make sure that you're talking with your with attorneys or with your board about lobbying limits around that, because support or opposition of a ballot measure could be considered lobbying. So you want to pay attention to that. But in general, it is not a partisan activity. So from that standpoint, you are able to do that. And then you're able to also continue issue advocacy during an election. If you have a regular meeting with your congressperson or with your local city council member, you are absolutely able to continue that activity during the election, and that is still considered nonpartisan. So that's a few of those activities. The next thing I want to talk about is just splitting up some of those activities into different levels depending on your capacity as an organization. We know that nonprofit workers, that library staff are busy. You all are asked to do a lot of things. There's a lot of, if you will, those other duties as assigned in all of our job descriptions. And so we want to make sure that we are suggesting activities to you that are within your capacity and within your ability to do. Some organizations might not have very much capacity. Other organizations might have a lot of capacity. And so I really want to present some of these options to you in a way that will be accessible to you. So these lists are by no means exhaustive, and I've really seen so many organizations get really creative with the ways that they are incorporating voter education. So I encourage you to do that. Hopefully this is just a launching point for you as you plan these activities and get really engaged. So wanted to start out here with some fairly easy suggestions for things that you could do if you, only have a couple of weeks to plan, or if you really only have a week to plan, or you realize, oh my goodness, election day is tomorrow. What can I do? And here are a few things that you can do with that least amount of capacity. Amplifying any messaging from the Board of Elections. So the Board of Elections should be putting out information, whether they have a newsletter or they have social media or just on their website. They should have information about election dates, deadlines. So even if that is reposting something from your local Board of Elections to your community, or having a sheet of paper, a flyer, or something that has that information directly from the Board of Elections, just amplifying that information is a very safe thing to do, a very low risk, with the kind of the least amount of capacity, just amplifying that. You can also provide voter registration information. So just some basic information about how to register to vote. I know in my library where I live, I have often passed a little table that has, a stand up with some information about the dates, deadlines for voter registration and for early voting and all of that, with some voter registration forms right there. You'll also want to make sure that your staff are informed, right? So that if I, the patron, come and, need to ask more information about that, make sure that your staff are also informed and trained. But those can be some really simple things. You can also provide or promote sample ballots from your region when they become available. So just getting to know what is going to be on the ballot before you walk in and you're making that decision can be really valuable. I know I have been in a position where I didn't do enough of my research and got surprised when I got to the ballot box. Oh my goodness, this is on the ballot. I don't know who these people are, or what this position is. So you all as librarians and as libraries can start to provide that information. You're so good at research, right? And finding that information, and then making sure that folks have access to those sample ballots so they can take the time to do their research before they get to the ballot box. And then a thing you can do kind of year round is provide information on how to contact your currently elected officials in your area. So this is something that a lot of organizations do. They think about voter engagement as just something that happens, in the few months before November. But I really want to encourage you to think about this in a year-round way. If we want folks to be truly civically engaged, if we want our communities to be paying attention and be aware, then we need to be supporting them in doing that year-round. So maybe this is, after November, you say, hey, here's who won these elections, and you're promoting that information. And then ensuring that folks have access to the information for how to get in touch with their elected officials. And throughout the year, right? So that they know, hey, this person got elected. Here is something that they voted for. How do I feel about that? And how is that going to impact whether or not I vote for them the next time they're up for election? So this can really be year-round organizing. And that is a really powerful way to go about this. So the next piece here, I've got a list here of some things with kind of medium capacity. If you're an organization that has medium capacity, you may want to hold some mock elections so that voters can practice. I've seen this done with young people to kind of get them in the habit of voting. I've also seen this done, with adults. So maybe you have a display in the library that, asks folks to vote for the best cookie or the best book genre or something like that. That really helps to get them thinking about the election, helps them to practice, doing the research. Okay, how would I, figure out what is the best cookie type, right? Am I going to the cookbook section and doing some research there, right? Holding those mock elections can just help get folks in the mindset and ready to vote. Also, make sure that you're partnering with other organizations. There are so many organizations around, whether it is statewide or local, that are really focusing on democracy. I know we work often with the League of Women Voters, but there's lots of other ones, especially local organizations that have information they're wanting to get to voters. And so you can really partner with those. You can host them to talk about topics related to the election. You could invite a former legislator, some policy experts to talk about maybe if there's a ballot initiative or a particular policy that your community has been talking about. Start to do that education, right? You all as libraries have great opportunities for educating the community. And so that's absolutely something you can do around voting as well. You can partner with voting organizations to table in your lobby, right? How great would that be if on a regular basis, maybe when you're busiest on a Saturday or on, certain evenings or mornings, if you have someone there giving information about voting and helping people walk through the process of registering or filling out mail-in ballots or things like that. And then other things you could do, some ideas here, printing bookmarks with key election dates and deadlines, or just some kind of printout that has those key dates could be really great. Those are just some ideas, and I'm sure you're able to run with those from here. And then lastly, some engagement activities that would require the most capacity, but would also then provide the most impact, right? With this, could provide really, really strong impact. So you could host a local candidate forum, like I mentioned before. These are often done really well when you're partnering with other organizations. So if there's a local issue that's on the ballot, or if there is a city council race or mayoral race, you can get different organizations. Maybe there's an organization focused on the environment, an organization focused on youth, and an organization focused on healthcare. And there are, specific questions that you want to hear from candidates about those issues. You all can work together to host that forum, and each of you, has a different question that you're asking to all of those candidates to get that information to your community. You can also invite candidates to tour the library. There may be candidates who have never been to your library before. They might not know about all the services that you are providing, and the constituents that you're working with. And so that's your opportunity to talk about the work that you're doing. There's a chance that folks who are being elected might have influence over budgets or over things that could impact the library. So ensuring that each of those candidates, you offer equal opportunities to each of those candidates, but to take them on a tour of the library, let them know about the things that you're working on to make the community better. Also, this was a great idea I saw from a local library that had an intergenerational conversation about voting. I know lots of folks want to get young people involved in voting. And then there are lots of folks who are older, who have been voting for so long and have been been kind of through the trenches in this. And so having that intergenerational conversation, whether that's a panel or some other format, could be really powerful. And then incorporate civics education throughout the year, not just near the election. I know I always think back to the I'm Just a Bill song from Schoolhouse Rock, but there are lots of ways that you can offer those little tidbits of civics education to ensure folks know, hey, this is what our state Senate is doing. This is what our federal Senate is doing. And here's the difference. And here's those roles. And here's how often they get elected. Things like that may be fresh in a young person's mind from having civics in high school and may not be fresh for them, or they may not have had that opportunity. So just doing that year-round civics education can help keep voting top of mind for folks as you go. The next thing I want to talk through is just a format here and a way of thinking about what voters need in order to get to the polls. So all voters, and I really talk about, when I say voters, I am including potential voters. I think we have to believe in the world that we want to see, right? And I would love to see a world where everyone is a voter. So I will refer to folks as voters. And the three things that voters need are a purpose. Why are they voting? Why are they showing up? They need to know the process. How do they vote? What are their options? What are the steps that it takes? What's that process? And then they need to make a plan. What's going to be best for me to vote? What am I voting for? When am I voting? What is my backup plan? So I wanted to just talk through some of these. First thing here is purpose. Why are they voting, right? Why would someone do that? And often folks are moved by their personal values, sometimes by community concerns, things that are happening in the community. These potholes have been driving me bananas. I really need somebody at City Hall who can take care of these. Or maybe it's policies, that someone really cares about that they want to see passed in their community. And then there's also the question of, have they been satisfied with the way that things currently have been going? Or would they like to see a change? Would they like to see someone else in that position? And then really, what outcome are they hoping for? This is not necessarily about a particular candidate, but can be an outcome for the community. We want to be seen as a more inclusive community. We want to be seen as an environmentally friendly community, right? What are those outcomes that are really important? Oh, yes. And so then the other piece of this, kind of the ways that you can make this real, is looking at those issues that impact the vast majority of our communities. I think it's really easy, and the media really focuses a lot on social issues and on a lot of the things that just are clickbait, right? And will get that get everyone's blood boiling about really controversial issues, or issues that have been presented as controversial. But sometimes when you're talking with voters and helping them figure out their purpose for voting, they may be more connected to some of the everyday things that our elected officials are doing. So things like housing. If you're working with folks who maybe have experienced homelessness, or they volunteer with a housing support organization, a lot of these decisions around Section 8, around homeless services and funding and all of that is actually determined by people that we elect. So if someone cares about that, you can maybe talk with them about making that connection between, okay, these are the values that you hold, and then these are the people that are making decisions about that. And so it's crucial to have that conversation and make that connection. Same goes with, right, employment, healthcare, environment, and all of those are just important there. Some of the other issues to connect are around community planning, childcare, things like Head Start, right? Education generally, and food access. So around the kind of sidewalks and roads and safety, I have a little bit of a story. I was living in Cleveland, Ohio. Lots of snow and salt means lots of potholes, right? There was one path on my way home from work that drove me bananas. I kept thinking, somebody needs to do something about that before, someone loses a tire. And then I saw a city council member actually post on their Facebook that there was a dedicated city phone number for calling in potholes. I called to report it, and it was fixed within 2 weeks. I voted for that council person the next time that came around, because they knew that their role was to offer that connection between residents and city services. I didn't know much else about this city council member's politics or who she voted for president, but what mattered in that moment was I needed to make sure that I was receiving the city services that my taxes were going toward, and that representative really did a good job in making that connection. So sometimes those types of connections, right, to something very relevant, very visceral in people's lives, can help to make that connection for them. The next piece here I'll focus on is just process. So what are the steps that are involved in voting for someone? You can always double check someone's voter registration, even in states that have automatic voter registration, just making sure that your information is correct, that your address hasn't changed, making sure that you know where your polling location is. All of that never hurts to double check that. When is the election, right? Look at the calendar. Is this little Susie's, diving competition or whatever is happening there? Actually look at the calendar, make sure that it's on their calendar so that they can take those steps. How do you find out what is on the ballot? The League of Women Voters has a great resource. Ballotpedia has some great resources. Those are both nonpartisan resources where you can find out more information. But also your elections office is always a great resource there. And then what are the deadlines? What deadlines do you need to know about? How do you prepare for that, right? Oh, am I on vacation during that period? So I need to make sure I do it before I leave the country. Just helping to understand that process so they can make that plan. And then learning more about what tools exist to learn more about those candidates. Often your local newspaper will do some coverage on those. There are candidate forums. There are nonpartisan advocacy organizations that have kind of been tracking these bills that may be important to you. So those are some of the steps, right, that you'll do. Your goal is to make that easy for the voters and make that as accessible as possible. And then the last piece here is around making a plan. So the plan is going to look different for every voter. But what's really important is that every voter has an intentional strategy for making sure that they're able to show up. And if that strategy, if that plan A doesn't work for whatever reason, that they also have a plan B. If their plan is to vote by mail, but they are not able to get their ballot turned in time, they need to know about provisional voting options so that they can show up on election day and what are their options for actually making sure that they are able to vote. So that's really crucial. And then I have a couple of just tips in general for folks that are talking to voters that are kind of on those front lines that are talking directly to voters. So whenever you're making that connection, you want to try to avoid making it transactional. You want to listen to someone's reasonings. If folks are hesitant about voting, there's probably a reason why. And so understanding that reason and making sure that that voter feels heard is important to having them build that trust and having them have that, that connection and that understanding of the importance of voting and why their voice is crucial. Focus, also you can focus on local issues that may be particularly relevant. If you get into big debates about the president or maybe even about Congress at the federal level, that may be a little difficult to actually make it concrete. There are some things with budgets and all of that that become concrete, but when you think about local issues, when you think about judges or those ballot issues that really impact folks even more directly than our federal elections, that can be really helpful to kind of get down to brass tacks with folks. And then again, offering to double check their registration and polling place or show them a sample ballot, right? This is who is going to be on the election so that, again, they're not showing up not aware of that, or we don't want any surprises on election day, right? We want you to be strategic. We want you to go in and make that, make your vote count. And then just as a reminder, it's just like the marketing rule of 7, it may take multiple conversations with a voter to get them to invest and make the decision to vote. And it's okay if your conversation does not lead a person to vote. That is okay. People are going to, do what they're going to do, but know that if you've had that conversation, if you've introduced it, then you have planted a seed that someone else may end up watering. So all of those things can really, I think, help to move folks along that path. And again, you all as nonprofit leaders, as libraries, as community centers, you are there as a trusted entity to stay nonpartisan and offer really good information. So I know that was a lot to pass on to you all, and so hopefully, because this will be recorded, you're able to go back and catch anything that you missed. But wanted to highlight just a couple of action items here. One is that National Voter Registration Day this year is September 16th. It's a Tuesday. I want to encourage folks to become community partners for this. This is a free opportunity. You'll get all kinds of resources. I personally love the stickers because I love a sticker, but there are posters, all kinds of editable tools there as well. So I just really encourage you to become a partner there. And if you'd like to get more information or get involved with Nonprofit Vote, we have our free resource library. You can also access the Nonprofit Power Report, and then you can take the Nonprofit Vote Pledge. And what this pledge does is it adds you to our list of partners. And that list, we will send out an email to you all, an email newsletter that will come out every couple of weeks with tools, with templates, with case studies of other organizations that have done this, all kinds of tools and resources to just equip you to be best prepared to serve your communities and engage them in elections and voting. And with that, I will close us out and just say thank you again so much to every library, and I'm excited to see what is next. So I'll pass it back to you, Cinnober.
Thank you so much, Gwen, for that amazing presentation. I think we just had a couple of questions. So first, what is the most common mistake that nonprofits make in terms of being partisan when they're participating in this type of voter engagement? And the second part to that question, how can they avoid that mistake?
Yes, that's a great question. I see this a lot, nonprofits that are being really intentional. I think one of the things to pay attention to is just when you're out and about in the community, candidates are trying to get their information out in any way that they possibly can, right? So they are using all of their connections, all of their contacts. So a candidate may come to you and say, hey, oh my gosh, we're old friends from, this leadership program we did together, or, we went to high school together. Hey, will you just send this little note out to your email list? Just, it's just information about, my campaign, and, I support your work. And so, just send this little thing out. But if you all as a nonprofit do that, and you're not doing that, in the form of a candidate forum or something where all of the candidates are equally represented, that could really get you into trouble. Similarly, when, if you're out and about at an event and a candidate says, hey, can we pose for a picture? And you're wearing, your organizational t-shirt or your name tag or something like that, that is associating you with your nonprofit organization. And if that candidate then posts that picture on their campaign website, you start to run into some issues. So just to be really safe, you want to ensure that anything that you're doing with one candidate, you are also offering equally to others. And then just really be careful, especially when it comes close to election time, just paying attention to, your media and all of that stuff. And again, I'm not an attorney, but please do talk with counsel there. We are also big fans of the Boulder advocacy team at Alliance for Justice, and they have all kinds of resources, and they do have attorneys you can talk to just get that more specific information that you may need. But yeah, great question.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And then our last question is just what challenges, if any, do you think nonprofits are facing as they conduct this sort of election administration work for this year?
Yeah, great question. I think that we're seeing a lot of issues and topics that were not really considered political before, but they're being politicized. So things like what books are in a library used to be, pretty open, and really we trust our librarians to make the best decisions about that. And I think that is we're seeing a lot of those issues. Even things like democracy and voting, right, are becoming politicized issues and therefore polarized issues. And so I think what we can do as nonprofits, and what you all as librarians and as library workers can do is to know your expertise and know your work and have confidence in that. You know your communities, you know what your communities need, and don't be afraid to stand in your power with that, and to speak about that, right? What youth respond to, and what is beneficial for them. You know what resources your community needs, and so ensure that anytime you are speaking about that, you are speaking from that subject matter expertise, because that is what's really valuable. So I would just encourage folks to don't lose your power and your expertise.
That is such helpful advice, Gwen. We really appreciate you taking the time today, and yeah, stay tuned for more of our webinar series celebrating the civic season.
Thank you so much.